Thought I would share with folks at this point where I'm halfway done with a roughly 12,000 gallon water storage space in the landscape at our main 6-acre site just north of Trumansburg. And for those of you that watch the channel, you're probably wondering, well, wait a minute, what about that whole big thing you're working on? Well, I'm doing that too, but I've paused on that because this I feel like is something that can get to full completion within the next week, and I'd like to move it forward. Let me show you the other pond first. The pond that I've been talking about in the last two videos is this area over here, which someone was kind enough, and embarrassingly for me enough, to let me know that my calculation of 200,000 gallons was way off. It's closer to 50 or 60,000 gallons. So my apologies for incorrectness there. I found something online and put in the numbers and it was wrong, I guess. But it's still a nice size space. You can see it's not that different from the last video. I sowed everything in here to a cover crop of buckwheat, and I'm going to let it rest for a little bit and we'll come back to it. But being aware of the fact that there's really no way realistically in early August that we're going to get this whole space fully done this fall. In fact, the miscanthus and the persimmon don't even come out until November. It seemed prudent to figure out an area where we can actually get something that we know will be done before next season. So that's what that other project's about. The fun thing about the smaller pond that I'm working on right now, or irrigation pool, is that it does still relate to this project. This will be the largest water holding, highest in the landscape when it's all said and done. Either this year, more likely than not, this time next year. And as I mentioned in one of the other videos, my plan is to use a solar panel and a bilge pump to lift water and fill a 600-gallon tank that'll be tucked in the shade right over there-ish. My thought is to have the overflow from that tank continue on and ultimately fill up the 12,000-gallon pond space, which is just past where my finger is, which will service that whole section of the property, that far end of the property. There's some pretty intense drought stress happening in this landscape. We finished harvesting our garlic and got all the beds that the garlic was in set to cover crops, but we don't really have enough water stored in the cisterns off the roof of the Cobb cottage to be able to keep up with the watering needs of these all the time. There's probably about 20 beds like this, and so fingers crossed we get rain, but it really feels so important to be able to cache huge volumes of water with a little bit of gravity assist for our future. So it's kind of strange chipping away at building water holding capacity in the landscape while I'm watching plants wither and dry out. But now's the moment while the ground is dry. And so you can see the new spot is just over there, just past these potato beds. This is about maybe 100 yards from the much larger space. And I crunched the numbers that this should be around 10 to 12,000 gallons, depending on how deep we can get. And right now there's about 20 labor hours into this. My really wonderful friend Juan helped a bunch this morning, and I spent 5 hours the other day and around maybe 8 hours, 6 hours yesterday. And I would guess there's another 5 to 10 hours of work to dig down, get all this soil out, and then put in a pond liner. And I'd like to ask folks for your input on this. I researched it and it seems like that EPDM rubber pond liner or RPE pond liner are the two main options I might want to explore. Do folks have opinions on these? I'm leaning towards RPE, reinforced polyethylene. Supposedly it stores water in a way that's safe for plants and animals. I always wonder about that. But my thought would be, once all the material's out, so we'll go down another 2 feet, maybe 3 feet in the center, and then a lot of that subsoil will be used to berm all around. You can see we're getting a lot of that done on this side, on the west side, so that when the liner goes in, it not only comes up to grade, but also goes up another foot or two, comes over, and then we'll move some soil back on top to pin it down. And that should give us a really big boost. We might actually be able to get this to be almost 6 feet deep in the center. And the plan will be to have all aquatic plants on top to reduce evaporation and have more production and nursery work, and then have a ready source of water that we can either use solar panels to move the water with pumps into these gardens, or simply dip in, or set up a siphon from this stock tank, from this holding space, to the gardens that are down low. A lot of the soil that's coming out of here, you can see, is very, very low quality soil as of now. It's prone towards real dryness, so it felt like a really good candidate spot. It's not as though this was this beautiful, productive space in the landscape. It's another high point. Again, the major pond being over a similar elevation, but with a cistern in between them, with the overflow being able to send to here. And the other advantage that there is here is that the Scots pine to the west of this provides shade from about 1 p.m. onward, which is really helpful. And I suspect we'll be able to plant lots and lots of plants on the boundaries of this to hide and shelter this space as it goes along. I can imagine a lot of folks watching this video thinking to themselves, what the heck, man? You started out on a big pond project and now you're taking a break or getting distracted with another smaller pond project. Why don't you finish what you started? And I appreciate that sentiment, except I understand that that large pond is a long-term project. And the fact that within a few more days of work, we can get this 100% excavated, the whole berm defined with the subsoil that's here, take measurements with string to figure out exactly how many feet of actual pond liner we need, get the pond liner in, then we're in a place to be able to store water actively in this landscape within a week or two. So if we get 2 or 3 inches, if we get a 1/4 inch, if we get anything, please, we'll be able to store some of that water in a non-leaking space here. I also feel like this, figuring out which sort of pond liner, the installation of it and all that, will help inform and get me organized so that when it's time to do the much larger pond with a liner, if that's what's needed, I'll have some experience with that. So it feels pretty helpful. I'm going to get back to the digging and bringing out of the material. It's long, it's slow, it's tedious, but it's producing mountains and mountains of soil. Even though it's not very rich looking by any stretch, it's a good loose crumbly structure, lots of sand in it. So I figure once we actually get some rains at some point, I can get this set to a cover crop, get some compost and mulch on there, and all of this soil will be able to be useful to gardens next year. I don't expect it to do much in helping our production this year. In fact, it's basically survival mode until we get some real rain. You can see the potatoes barely holding on. So I added some soil, we'll add some more mulch. But we'll get rain one of these days, right? At least we're setting up to be able to store the pulse of excess water from next winter onward. So anyway, that's what's going on. Please provide some feedback to me. Do you have experience with EPDM rubber liners or RPE polyethylene liners? Do you have knowledge about either toxicity or concerns that I should be aware of that I wouldn't get just from looking on websites? Do you think I'm really on the wrong track with this or how I'm going about it? Give me some feedback. I'd love to hear from folks with more experience. And I'll keep digging and videotaping once in a blue moon. Thanks for watching.